Hello and welcome to our latest installment of Supercharge Your Presence. I'm Peggy Mihalik, Director of Member Content here at APA. Today's webinar focuses on generating a side income online as a psychologist. This presentation will cover the following topics: the important benefits of extra income, how to choose the right jobs, additional income streams to consider, ways to get your idea off the ground, how to overcome mental blocks related to pricing and imposter syndrome. Some important points before we get started. The views expressed in this presentation are those of the presenter and may not reflect the views or policies of the American Psychological Association. Next, this program does not offer CE. However, we will email everyone watching live today a certificate of attendance. During our time together, you will be on mute. You can communicate to us using the questions box located in your webinar control panel. If you have a question for our presenter, type them in using the questions box, also located in your webinar control panel. Now for our speaker. Dr. Daniel Wendler is the founder of marketingfortherapists.org and the author of Clicking with Clients, Online Marketing for Private Practice Therapists. Wendler is a postdoctoral fellow at Deep Eddy Psychotherapy, one of the largest outpatient practices in Austin, Texas. He is an alumni of George Fox University's Graduate School of Clinical Psychology in Newberg, Oregon. Dr. Wendler is excited to share his insights with you today. Welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm going to turn on my webcam for just a second so that you guys can enjoy my pandemic hairstyle. So I'm gonna keep it off for most of the presentation so that we have better bandwidth because we got a big audience today. But I just wanted you to all know that I am in fact a real person and also just have pity for my my pandemic hairdo. So I am really excited to jump into this topic. It's an important one for me because I feel like when we as psychologists or students of psychology can have a little bit more financial security, it takes a lot of pressure off and frees us up to do more important work in the world. And so I want to kind of share with you guys some tips for making that happen. So the plan that we have for today is I want to start by talking about the value of having multiple income streams, going beyond just the one main income that you get from your job and expanding that out to multiple income streams. And then I want to talk about the 3 steps that you need to take in order to make that happen, in order to actually create a viable secondary income stream for yourself. And then I want to close out by talking about a couple of details that you need to keep in mind. So I'll sort of paint the big picture, and then I'll zoom in on a couple of things related to managing your expenses, figuring out what to charge for your services, and then also attending to the ethical issues involved in setting up a side income stream. So to kind of set the stage for our talk today, I want to tell you guys a story about a seatbelt because I'm sure that you all are extremely interested about seatbelts, but trust me, this will be good. So when the car was first developed and when the seatbelt was first added to the automobile, the original design for the seatbelt was a single strap that crossed across the lap, basically the kind of seatbelt that you see in an airplane today. And this was certainly better than nothing. But this was actually pretty limited. When people would get into automobile accidents, this single strap didn't provide great protection, and so there was a lot of injury, a lot of fatalities. But there was a man in, I believe, 1959 named Niels Bohlin, who was a Swedish engineer for the car company Volvo. And what he realized is that by going from 1 to 2, by adding a second strap across the chest, like there is in this image, you could dramatically increase the safety of the seatbelt. And so he rolled out his invention. Volvo, in a great act of altruism, made it free for all the other car companies to use. And pretty soon that became the standard that every seatbelt manufacturer used. And some estimates say that this invention has saved over 1 million lives since it was developed. And so I'm not bringing up the story because I really want to talk about seatbelts, even though it is important. I'm bringing it up because I want to highlight the value of going from 1 to 2 and how going from 1 to 2, it's not just the sum of its parts. It's not just a doubling of value, but sometimes there can be a massive increase that comes from going from 1 to 2. And of course, that applies when it comes to going from 1 income to 2 income. I probably don't need to spend all that much time, talking about the value of this. You guys are here in the webinar. You're probably already kind of sold on the idea of building more income streams, but I want to speak to it briefly just to help build motivation for you in potentially going after some of the plans that we'll talk about later in the presentation. So one of the major values of adding in a secondary income stream is financial security. This is sort of protection against bad things that might happen, or difficulties that might come your way. So if you have job loss, but you have a second income stream, then you actually have a lot of flexibility because your income doesn't go down to zero. You still have a safety net. If you have an unexpected expense that comes your way, you've got more income coming in that helps you handle it. And oftentimes a second income stream, especially the kind that we'll be talking about today, you have some ability to kind of scale it up or scale it down based on the amount of effort that you put in. And so if you have an unexpected expense, then you can say, all right, I'm going to hustle a little bit harder. I'm going to bring in some more money. I'm going to be able to cover that. And then also, retirement, from probably many of us, it's kind of far out, but it's gonna come at some. Your financial security is not quite where you want it to be. You might have to put off your retirement or delay your retirement. But if you have a secondary income stream, that can help you reach your retirement savings goals, or it can allow you to do sort of a partial retirement where maybe your first, your main job, you retire from that, but then whatever your secondary income source is, that continues in retirement. I think that, these financial security things are kind of obvious, but there's also financial freedom, which is not just protection from the bad stuff, but an opening up of more good stuff in your life. By having freedom from debt or financial stress, it kind of opens up your energy and your mental attention to focus on more important things in life, like the contributions that you want to make. It allows you to invest in meaningful experiences that bring you a lot of fulfillment, memories that'll last a lifetime. And then also it lets you support causes that you care about. You can invest in, nonprofits, you can invest in, political organizations, whatever you care about, where you want to see an impact on the world. Having a little bit of financial freedom lets you invest into that. So how do you actually do it? Well, there's a couple of different options from moving from one income stream to two, or potentially to more. And I want to talk about them. The most obvious one that many people sort of think of first is the idea of a second job. And this is basically just like you take a job just like your first job, but then you do it again. So if you are a college professor, maybe you find another university that you can teach a couple classes at over the weekend. If you work as a clinician, maybe you find some crisis hotline that you can, work at during the evenings, something like that. And this is okay, but it can be often very difficult to juggle two jobs at the same time, and a second job has all of the same downsides of a first job. It's still, you're working at the whim of an employer. If you get laid off, that income goes away immediately. Oftentimes there's a limitation to being able to increase your income over time. So, nothing wrong with a second job, but there are limitations. Another option that's become, pretty popular over the last 10 years or so is sort of this idea of working in the gig economy. So, you drive for Uber, you go on TaskRabbit and you assemble somebody's IKEA furniture for them. Or for many people working in the mental health space, there is, seeing therapy clients through platforms such as BetterHelp or Talkspace. And this is good in the sense that it provides a lot of flexibility, and it's a very fast way to start earning income. Like if you just wanted to earn an extra $100 as quickly as possible, probably picking up some gig work is going to be your best way of doing that. The downside is that if you are doing gig work, you're just sort of like a cog in somebody else's machine. You're very easily replaced, and because of that, you have very little negotiating power, and you get paid very little for your time. Many people that that do delivery work, when they calculate out exactly what they're earning per hour, it's often less than minimum wage when you factor in all of the expenses that go into it. And even when you're doing more professional work, like you're doing therapy through Talkspace, BetterHelp, et cetera, when you look at the reports of people that share what their income is, it's often like 15, 20 bucks an hour, which is, it's not awful, but it's if you did all of the work of going to graduate school, getting licensed, and then you're working for 15 bucks an hour, you can often do better than that. So what I prefer as your best way of building a new income stream is what I call a side venture or a side business. And I use the venture term because it's a little bit more exciting and because I had an old college professor who used that language. But if it's easier for you to think of it as a side business, that's okay too. And basically, the idea behind a side business or a side venture is that you are going out in the world and you are creating a service or you're creating a product, and then you are the one that is selling it. So you're not working for somebody else, you're not a cog in somebody else's machine. You are creating a new idea and bringing it to the world. And this doesn't have to be super elaborate. Like, you don't have to go and file for an LLC necessarily, talk to your accountant, whatever, but you don't have to file for an LLC. You don't have to rent office space. You don't have to hire somebody to make you a logo. All it means is that you are creating a new idea and you are trying to earn income off of that idea. So how do you do it? How do you actually make that happen? Well, this is the part where a lot of people start to think about tools. They start to think about, oh, well, do I make an online course, or should I do, consulting? Like, what is the actual, format that my solution will take? And that's actually premature, because if you start with just, how are you going to build it? It's kind of like, trying to go to the Home Depot and, trying to choose what things to put on your tool belt before you know if you're building, a birdhouse or, a new bathtub. That's, you want to wait and first create the strategy, and then those other things will sort of just intuitively make sense. And so I want to provide for you 3 steps that, if you can sort of think through these 3 steps, it's going to create a really comprehensive strategy for you that will then make it easy for you to figure out all of these tactical decisions about, okay, do I offer an online course or an ebook? Do I offer, consulting, or, do I teach a class, etc. So what are the 3 steps? Well, I like to call them: number 1, finding a problem to solve; number 2, breaking what I call the Joker rule, and I'll explain what that means; and then number 3, building your audience. And so let's jump through each of these things in turn. So first, there's the question of finding a problem to solve. Most of the time, when you are trying to get your side venture off the ground, the best thing to orient it around is a significant problem that you're going to be able to solve for other people, because people are willing to pay for a significant problem to be solved in their life. Obviously there's exceptions to every rule, and there's businesses that are plenty successful without solving any particular problem, right? Like, Taylor Swift makes quite a lot of money. I don't know that she started, her music career trying to, solve a problem. She just wanted to make cool music, and it worked out just fine for her. But most of us are not Taylor Swift, and most of the time, if we want to have better odds of actually reaching a paying audience, we want to focus what we're offering around a problem that we're going to solve for people. But how do you find what problem to solve? Well, I like to suggest sort of a 2-part system. I like to suggest that first, you look at things in your life that were problems that you solved that were really easy for you to solve, that maybe other people struggled with this, other people found this to be a challenge, but you just like sailed through it with flying colors. It was way easier for you than it was for somebody else. And the reason why this is a valuable place to look is because it means that you probably have some sort of unique gifting, unique strength that's going to equip you to there's going to be something that is hard for other people, but it's easy for you, and that makes it so that you could probably solve that problem for them in an easy way. Another thing that you can think about are problems that used to be really hard for you, challenges that were maybe significant parts of your story in some way that you really had to grow in order to overcome. You had to develop strategies, you had to build wisdom and strength of character in order to make it through a particular challenge. Because if you had to develop all of those systems for overcoming the challenge yourself, then probably you can take those challenges, you can take those systems and you can teach them to somebody else. You will have a lot of wisdom, a lot of empathy for how to help bring somebody else through that same challenge that you yourself had to struggle with. So let me give you some examples of how this might work. When I was in my PsyD program, I had a colleague in my cohort who, for whatever reason, was just a natural when it came to APA format. Like, I don't know if she just would read the APA style guide for fun when she was a child or what it was, but she was exceptionally good at APA format. Like she could look at an essay and instantly figure out exactly what needed to happen, to make sure that all of the parentheses and all of the, like spacing and whatever was exactly in line with the APA formatting. But a lot of other students in the program, especially the first years, this was not something that came naturally to them. And so they would miss easy points on their assignments by, missing, parts of APA formatting. And then, this also created a problem for the professors, because the professors, they didn't want to spend their time, grading formatting. They wanted to engage with the content of the essays, but, they had to engage with the formatting. So, my friend realized this problem. And she went to the dean of our program and she said, look, you have a problem. You have students that are struggling with APA formatting. I can help you solve that problem. Set aside a little bit of the department budget to pay me, some amount per hour. And then anytime that another student wants help, proofreading their essays and, providing tutoring on making sure that they're writing in APA formatting, they can just hire me. So it's free to the student. The department pays a little bit, and then I can, let me do that instead of having the professors do that. And so the dean said, sure, and they set aside that budget. And then for the rest of my friend's time in the program, anytime that a new student was struggling with APA formatting, they would get sent over to her, and she was able to earn a little income from that. So she took her strength of APA formatting that she was better at than the average person in the program, and turned that into a nice business for her, which gave her a lot of good spending money while she was in the program. An example on the flip side of somebody that turned a weakness or a struggle into a business is my friend and colleague Kyler Shumway, who's done a lot of speaking for the APA Supercharged series also. And so you wouldn't know it now by listening to him, because right now he's a really excellent public speaker. But when Kyler was first starting out, he was experiencing a huge amount of stage fright and speaking anxiety. And this was very difficult for him to overcome, but he overcame it. He worked really hard, he put together systems, and he figured out a strategy for allowing himself to become the great public speaker that he is today. And so he realized, you know what, if this was really hard for me, it was probably really hard for other people also. And if the strategies that I developed worked for me, then they'd probably work for somebody else also. So he, sat down and he wrote a book called Get Psyched, about how therapists and other mental health professionals can become public speakers. And he wrote down all the tips that helped himself, and he turned that into a way to generate income by helping other people solve the problem that used to be such a problem for himself. So those are some examples of how this can work. And again, with any rule that I'm telling you today, there's exceptions to that rule. And so if you've got a great idea for a problem to solve that doesn't fit this category, like, go for it. I had a cousin that when he was in high school, he started a business shoveling people's driveways, in the mornings during the winter. And it's not that my cousin had any particular strength or weakness around shoveling driveways. It's just that, he lived in the middle of Utah, and, there's a lot of people that needed their driveways to be shoveled. And so he figured, hey, I can do this. And so, you can solve a problem in another way. But this is, I think, generally a pretty helpful way to start organizing your thinking and to find a problem that you can solve in a unique way, because that sort of protects you against the competition. Maybe as you're thinking about this, there's some ideas that are immediately coming to your mind. Maybe you're going to need to spend a little bit of time thinking through this, or talking it over with a friend, talking it over with a mentor, maybe talking it over with your partner. Oftentimes the other people in our lives have a better sense of our own strengths and challenges than we do. But let's assume that whether now or later, you do in fact figure out a problem that you can solve for other people. That's a significant problem. Is this, you've now reached it, you can just sort of say, hey guys, I can solve your problem, come spend me, come spend your money on me? Well, unfortunately, no. And the reason is because you first have to break the Joker rule before anybody is going to give you money. And so what do I mean by that? Well, In the movie The Dark Knight, there's a scene where Heath Ledger's Joker, looks at the camera and he says, if you're good at something, never do it for free. And this is a pretty good rule if you're a supervillain. But if you are a psychologist or a graduate student that is trying to start a side venture, it's not a very good rule for you. And the reason is because when you are trying to start your own business, you don't have any credibility. And this can be a sort of a foreign concept for many of us in the psychology field, because most of our professional roles in psychology come with credibility built in. If I am, a university professor and I step into my classroom on the first day of school, I automatically have credibility just by virtue of being the professor, of having the weight of the institution behind me. Same thing if I'm a clinician and I step into my therapy office, like the licensing board of my state, the education that I've received, that automatically gives me credibility. Even if I'm just a practicum student, I still have credibility because I'm able to borrow the credibility from my supervisor. My practicum clients meet with me and they believe that I can help them solve their problems because they understand that I've got the right training, the right supervision in order to be able to do that. But if you start like if you throw up a website and you say, hey guys, I know how to solve your problem, you're just some person on the internet. You don't have any credibility. And and people are going to be really hesitant to give you money, in order to solve their problem. So you have to break the Joker rule. Instead of saying, if you're good at something, never do it for free, you have to flip it around. You have to say, to show that you're good at something, do it for free. And this is what I mean. You need to build credibility by solving people's problems for free. And I don't mean that you have to start a charity. I don't mean that you can never ask for money, but you have to find some way where you are able to provide real, genuine proof of your ability to solve people's problems, really let them taste a sense of progress or improvement from your intervention before you ask them for a single dollar. And so how might this work in practice? Well, one example is the practice of the practice model. The practice of the practice is an online website that has resources for therapists who are wanting to start a private practice or therapists who are in a private practice. And they have a lot of paid resources. There's a lot of ways that you can give them money if you choose to do that. But you don't have to give them money in order to figure out if they're actually going to be able to help you with your private practice, because they have a huge resource library of in-depth articles on that will try to solve real problems that a private practice therapist has. Like if you are wondering what to name your private practice and that's a problem for you, they've got an in-depth article explaining exactly how to do that. They also have a whole bunch of podcasts where they interview experts and get information from the experts that you can then take and apply. And so, if you are interested in their paid services, you can first check out all of that free content, and then you can decide for yourself if the advice that they offer is credible, if you take it and you try to apply it in your own life, does it work, does it not? And then only after you've had the chance to really prove for yourself that they're helpful, do you then need to take the step of paying them for some of their more premium stuff. And so you can do that same thing. You can, with whatever the business is that you start, you can create a resource library, you can create a compilation of free advice, free guidance, free content that really solves problems for people. I don't mean like, write some blog posts where you just share random thoughts on the topic. I mean like really providing in-depth guidance that somebody can take and apply. And it's enough that if the only thing they did was just follow your free content, they would still see a difference in their life. And if you can do that, then you've established credibility and people are going to be willing to pay you for your paid services. Another model that you can take is the Hideout Theater model. So the Hideout Theater is an improvisational theater that's in my hometown of Austin, Texas. And they offer all sorts of paid improv classes if you want to learn how to do improv theater. But they also offer a free improv class that happens every week. And so if you are interested in improv theater, if you're wondering if maybe it'll solve a problem for you, will it help you feel less lonely? Will it help you feel more confident? Will it be something that you can look forward to every week? You don't have to guess. You don't have to put money down. You can just show up for their free improv class, try it out, and then decide for yourself. And it's not like, a 5-minute sample or something. It's a full, like improv class that really is enough for you to see the impact in your own life. Also, because of the pandemic, the classes are available online, anywhere in the country. So if you want to support an Austin local business, you can check them out. But, beside the point, this is another example where it's not static content. It's not stuff that people just read at their leisure. It's actually an active teaching, but it's an active teaching that is available for free. So that is how you break the Joker rule, is that you create this content or you provide access to yourself and you give enough of it that people are able to determine for themselves if you can really help them or not. But there's still one more step. And I'm going to take a drink before I tell you what it is, just to build the anticipation. And also because I'm thirsty. Okay, so the final step to consider is the topic of building your audience. Because the fact is, the internet is a really big place. And so let's say you find a problem that you are really well equipped to solve, and you create a lot of free content that really demonstrates that you can solve that problem, or you offer a really generous free consultation, free introductory class, whatever it might be. So you establish your credibility to anybody who cares to look, and then you publish it, and then you wait. Nobody's going to find you because people don't just randomly type in website URLs and stumble across random websites. People have to have some way of discovering you. And so in order for your business to take off, you need to build your audience. And so how do you do that? Well, there's two different models that I recommend. And again, the temptation here is to go to the level of tools. It's to go to the level of like saying like, well, should I do SEO or should I do social media, or like, what about TikTok? Should I get on TikTok? Is that the thing that people do these days? And that is premature. Instead, you need to first develop the high level strategy and figure out what you're trying to accomplish, and then figuring out the specific tools. That'll just sort of fall in place on its own. So what are the two high-level strategies that I think that you can pursue? Well, the first one is the relationship approach, and then the second one is the broadcasting approach. And so the relationship approach is based around this idea of building relationships directly with decision makers who either can on their own make a decision to bring a lot of business to you, or who can be a referral source that brings a lot of other people your way. And so, like, let's say you have, you have a service that solves a problem for parents. And maybe you're able to build a relationship with the teacher of a school, or, the teacher or principal at a school. And then anytime that a parent walks into their office with that particular problem, that teacher, that principal is going to refer that person over to you. You don't need to make 1,000 relationships like that. Maybe just 1 or 2 is going to be enough to really bring a lot of people your way. Or, maybe the problem that you solve is a problem that you solve for an entire school. Maybe you offer some kind of service that would be useful for an entire school. In that case, maybe you just need to get one principal to say yes, to then bring in enough revenue for you to make it worthwhile. Maybe you don't need that many customers. And so an example of how this might work is the public speaking work that I do. It's a little bit different this year because of the pandemic, but in a normal year, I usually only want to do like, maybe, 6, 7, 8 speaking things in a year, because it, it takes a lot of time to prepare these things. It takes a lot of time to travel to stuff. And so I don't need 500 speaking opportunities. I just need a few, and I need them to be the right ones. And so when I want to find some new speaking engagements, I will usually find conferences or find events that are really good fits for what I offer. And then I'll reach out to the conference organizers directly and I'll say, hey, here's some information about me. Here's some references. Here's some videos of other talks that I've done. Can we set up a call to see if I'd be the right fit for you? And, oftentimes, sometimes that doesn't work, obviously, but sometimes it does. and I only need a couple of those a year to make that work for me. And so that works just fine. Another example of this relationship approach is something that a friend of mine did. She wanted to start a business offering dog photography, like, taking portraits of people's dogs and, selling them the pictures. And so how do you find business for dog photography? Well, she found a local doggy daycare where, people drop their dogs off and the dogs are just there all during the day. And she made a relationship with that doggy daycare where the doggy daycare would promote her services to their clients, so that when the dogs were at the daycare, they could get pictures taken of them. And then, in exchange for promoting her services, she just agreed that any of the portraits that she took, she would give to the doggy daycare so that they could use in their website, they could use in their marketing. So the doggy daycare gets free marketing materials that normally would cost them a lot of money. My friend gets referrals that, she doesn't really have to work for. And that was plenty. Like, she's not trying to make $1 million photographing dogs. She was just trying to get a little bit of supplemental income, and having that one relationship was fine for her. And so the relationship approach works really well when, there's specific individuals who can bring you a significant amount of progress towards whatever your income goal is. And it works really well when, you're not trying to scale your business all the way up to the moon. Like, you have a specific sort of goal that you're trying to reach, and you can reach it with a couple of strategic relationships. There's another approach, which is the broadcasting approach. And with this approach, you find some platform that somebody else has built that is reaching an audience that is relevant for, the service or the product that you're providing. So basically, it's an audience that has the problem that you're trying to solve. And then you find a way to be a guest on their platform so that their audience gets to find out about you. So, if I, decide to start, I guess kind of, continuing with the dog example, if I decide to, find a solution to, how you can, be a good dog parent when you're writing your dissertation or something, and that's the business that I've developed. If I found a blogger that writes to graduate students, or a blogger that writes to pet owners, that would be somebody that would be reaching an audience that would probably, I would want them to hear about me. So the thing is, if you want to be a guest on somebody else's platform, you can't just say, look, can I just reach your audience? Instead, you have to offer something of value in return. And so usually that is a piece of content where you share your expertise in a really generous way. So you're writing a guest post, you are appearing on their podcast and allowing them to interview you, you're doing a webinar, you are producing sort of like a free sharing of your expertise, and then in exchange, their audience starts to pay attention to you. And the way that this typically works is that you start small and you work your way to larger platforms with bigger audiences over time. So probably, the New York Times is not going to want to interview you the day after you start out. But you might start with some small no-name blogs, and then you might start with some local organizations, and then you might sort of move up until eventually, you're able to reach platforms with very large audiences, because you sort of establish that you, number one, you're credible, but also, every time you do show up and you are a guest, you provide real value. You really go above and beyond to not just toot your own horn, but to offer people free content that really, again, solves a problem for them. One other thing to consider with the broadcasting approach is that you really want to make sure that whatever attention you attract, that you convert at least some of that into permanent followers. And what I mean by that is, let's say you get interviewed on the local TV station. That's great, right? But let's say, and let's say 10,000 people tune in and see your interview, and maybe, 1,000 of those people go and they visit your website. If those 1,000 people that visit your website look at your website and think, oh, that's cool, and then they leave and they never come back, that doesn't really help you, right? So instead, you want to try to find some way to make people into permanent followers. And usually having an email newsletter is one of the best ways to accomplish this. And there's another Supercharge webinar in the archive about creating an email newsletter. So that's a great second place to look if you're interested in the broadcasting approach. But you can do other things too. You can try to get people to follow you on social media. You can try to give people to sign up for a free consultation or some other way that you can build contact with them. But basically you want to have some kind of strategy for if you do get attention coming to your website, that then like you can turn that into a permanent follower that you can then contact later on, rather than just somebody that looks at you once and then they're gone. So what's an example of the broadcasting approach? Well, it's what I'm doing right now. Along with my my friend Kyler, I've been doing these APA Supercharge talks for for a couple of years, and this is and this is APA allowing me to use their platform to reach an audience of you guys. And APA allows me to do that because I'm taking the time to put together these talks that hopefully are valuable for you, hopefully help you do better work in the world as psychologists, and make you happy to be part of APA, etc. And so I'm providing value, APA giving me a platform. It's kind of a win-win. So that is the the broadcasting method. So let's kind of put this all together. Your first step is to determine the problem that you can solve. And the easiest way to do that is to think of problems that were easier for you than they were for other people, places where you have a natural gifting, or problems that were really hard for you that you really had to grow and challenge yourself in order to overcome. Then once you've identified your problem, break the Joker rule by establishing credibility and showing that you can solve the problem for free. Like, make it so that people don't have to give you a single dollar in order to see the impact of your advice in their life. And then once you've done that, then start to build an audience, either by making strategic relationships, reaching out directly to people who are decision makers, gatekeepers, referral sources, or by taking the broadcasting approach and speaking to larger and larger and larger audiences through guest postings, interview appearances, etc. And by the way, like, these things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. You can build relationships that give you referrals, and you can also do guest postings that build an audience. You can find a problem that both leans on your unique giftings, but then also relates to things that were hard to for you. So it doesn't have to be either or, but these are the kinds of questions to ask yourself. So once you've done this, then you should have a strong overall strategy, and then you can then go back and look at the specific tools of, like, okay, well, again, like, what website builder do I use? It's a lot easier to answer those sorts of questions when you know where you're trying to go, just in the same way that it's a lot easier to pick a hotel when you know what city you're trying to stay in. So I want to kind of give you an example of how all of this fits together by doing a case study from one of the first side ventures that I started myself. So this is a picture of me as a young Daniel. And as you can maybe tell from this picture, I was a pretty awkward, individual. And all of us, I think, are a little bit awkward when we're young, but I was especially awkward. I was sort of like industrial grade awkward. And when I was in high school, I ended up getting diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and learning that I was on the autism spectrum. And so I, kind of got an explanation for my awkwardness. And, obviously, like, the social struggles that came with my Asperger's diagnosis were really hard for me for a long time. That was a significant challenge for a big part of my life. But after I was diagnosed, I started to work really deliberately on teaching myself social skills, overcoming those social challenges, learning how to make friends. And I think I did a pretty good job. And so over time, I was able to overcome this challenge in a pretty significant way. Obviously, I'm not cured of autism, even if I would want to be, and I'm still have challenges associated with it. But I did, in a lot of ways, make, like, solve the problem. And so I decided to say, you know what? I think that I could solve this problem for other people also. I think I could take this thing that was really hard for me, that I really had to wrestle with, and use the same strategies to help other people. So I started a website called improveyoursocialskills.com, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a website that helps you improve your social skills. It has a lot of, content on, conversation, body language, whatever. And so I put that out there on the internet. But I didn't just like throw up a website and say, hey, I can help you improve your social skills. I made sure that I broke the Joker rule and established my credibility. So before I ever hit publish on the site, I wrote about 30,000 words of content. This is the screenshot that I took shortly before I published the site. This was, 28,724 words is what I had ready to go before I ever hit publish. And to be honest, that was probably overkill. I probably could have been okay with a fraction of that. But, having this much free content dramatically expressed my credibility. When anybody would come to my site, they would be like, oh man, this guy can really help me. Like, he's not just saying that he's a social skills guru. Like, I actually have enough advice that I can read it, I can apply, I can go back and apply it into my life, and then I can see, how it works. And so, by doing this, by having all of this content, like, even though I didn't really start with any sort of paid services, people started reaching out to me and asking for ways to give me money. People said, look, I love the content that you have, but have you considered writing a book? Because I would read it. Have you considered doing social skills coaching? Because I would sign up for that. And so I started to add new services, new products based on what people asked for. And, my revenue grew that way. But obviously, in order for that to happen, I had to build an audience. And so I started building an audience just in sort of like the most inefficient way possible. Like, I went on like online relationship forums or, Asperger's forums, and I would just like post in threads of people asking for, relationship advice. And I would give my 2 cents, and then I would, link back to my site and be like, oh, if you want to learn more, like, come read my site. And I mean, looking back, that was maybe even a little bit of spammy behavior, although I was giving good advice. But like, it started there, but then I started to improve in my strategy. I started to write guest posts. I started to start appearing on various interview opportunities, and things really took off when I started to do speaking. And so I've given a couple of TED Talks that cumulatively have had over 500,000 people view them. I've appeared in other places also, and then because of this, I started to develop an audience. The audience came to the site, and now, even though the site was launched 8 years ago, I still every month, earn an income from the sale of the materials that are on there. And every month, I usually get a couple of emails from readers who have said, hey, thank you for writing the site. This was really helpful for me, or I have a question for you. I'm new in college, and how do I make friends, et cetera, et cetera. And so, the impact and the income, from this business continues into the present day. And, I accomplished that by following the 3-part model that I talked about today. So that is the case study, but I want to talk about, and so that's sort of like the big picture, but I want to talk about a couple of small picture things just to give you a few last details before we move on to the Q&A. And so, because even though I think the big picture stuff is the most important, I think that these small things tend to be the places where people really get tripped up. So the first one that I want to talk about is the idea of managing your expenses. Because a lot of times people decide, okay, I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to start a side income, and then they immediately, end up several $1,000s in the hole, and they're like, well, that is the opposite of what I wanted to have happen. And so how do you protect yourself against losing money on your side venture? And the first thing that I'd say is to be really cautious around like business gurus who want to sell you, a course or sell you a service that costs a lot of money for how to make your own business. Obviously, some of those things are credible, and especially as you grow your business, you usually will reach a point eventually where you really do need expert help. But when you're just starting out, there's so much free resources that are out there, because there's a lot of people that have learned they have to break the Joker rule, so they've created a whole bunch of free content. And so usually you don't need the paid stuff when you're first starting out. Instead, try to drink really deeply from the wealth of free content that's out there. And the Supercharged talks are a great place to start. We've got multiple years of them going deep into all sorts of stuff related to online marketing. There's a lot of other credible resources out there also. But like, again, I'm not saying never pay for somebody's expertise, but be careful about that, especially at the beginning. The second thing that I'd recommend is that you make a plan to try to get your first dollar of revenue before you've spent $100 in expenses. And the reason why I say this, it's not because this is a rule that you absolutely must follow, but because it makes you laser focused on getting that first sale. Because if you can get that first sale, that really tells you that you're onto something. If you can, provide a service that solves a problem in such a way that people are willing to pay you for it, then that tells you you actually did find a problem that is important, and you actually do have enough credibility that people are willing to solve that, willing to pay you to solve that problem. Whereas if you can't get that first sale, then you maybe are on the wrong track and you need to readjust what it is your business is all about. And in order to figure that out, in order to figure out if you really can solve the problem, you don't need to invest a huge amount of money. And so that's why I say, try to make a plan to get your business to its first sale in the first $100. If it doesn't happen, not the end of the world. But by doing that planning, by thinking through what is essential to get that first sale and what is optional, it'll let you focus your efforts on the stuff that is most important. Like, getting a logo is fun, but is that essential to getting your first sale? No. And so instead of focusing your time on hiring a logo designer, you'll focus your time somewhere else. The one other thing to keep in mind about expenses is to treat the $1,000 mark as a critical warning. So, the goal of getting your first sale by $100 in expenses, that's sort of aspirational. But if you spent $1,000 on your business and you have not gotten any customers, then you really should sit down and consider if you're on the right track. Because if you've spent $1,000 on your business and you've gotten 0 sales, then, maybe you're on the right track. It's certainly possible. There's plenty of businesses that have been successful after putting several $1,000s in, initially. But if you still have not gotten any sales with $1,000 of expenses, probably the issue is more fundamental, and it's not something that's going to be solved by just spending another $1,000. And so I would treat the $1,000 mark as a place where you're like, I really need to pause, I really need to consider and try to make a decision if I maybe need to throw in the towel, I maybe need to restructure this, or like again, if you feel confident about continuing, you can continue. This isn't an absolute rule, but treat this as a warning sign. So that's the expense side of things. Then there's also the question of, how do you choose your rates? How do you know what to charge for your time? So the first thing to keep in mind is to charge for value, not effort. If I go to the doctor and they spend 5 minutes, but they cure an issue that has causes me pain every day, I don't care that it only took them 5 minutes. I care that they dramatically helped me, and I'm willing to pay them plenty of money for that. The same thing is happening for you in your services. You are solving a significant problem for people, because if it wasn't significant, they wouldn't be paying you for it. And so don't worry about how much time you put in or how hard it is for you to provide that service. Focus on the value that you're giving as you are, setting your rates. Also, try to ask for more than you think that you should. And the reason for this is because, number one, a lot of times when people are first starting out with their businesses, they tend to be timid, they tend to really undersell themselves. And then number two, a lot of times people underestimate all of the hidden expenses of time and money that go into making that sale. So maybe you say, okay, well, it's going to take me 5 hours to complete this project for a person. But what you don't realize is that it took you another 5 hours to actually get the person to agree to, to hire you. And so, or it's going to take, you're going to have to spend $50 on the materials for the project or whatever. And so I usually recommend that when you're starting off setting your prices, set it higher than you think that you should. And you can always bring it down, but start it higher, and you might be surprised by what people are willing to pay you. And then finally, when you set your pricing, give people 2 or 3 options. People usually like to be able to choose. And that makes them, like if they're choosing which one instead of yes or no, it makes them more likely to sign up. And it also increases your potential revenue, because some people are going to want to give you more money if a premium service is available. Some people are only going to be able to hire you if there's a cheaper service available. So having 2 or 3 options works pretty well. Finally, I want to talk about ethics. And I looked for free images about ethics that I could use, and I found this one. So it's ridiculous, but I hope you enjoy. The first thing to keep in mind is to tread carefully when you are providing coaching services. Because coaching services are really tempting to provide for those of us in the field of psychology, because we know how to help people with a lot of problems. We can give great advice on a lot of topics. And so we sort of think, well, why not just offer, assertiveness coaching or relationship coaching or life coaching or whatever. The problem is that there's pretty blurry lines between coaching and psychotherapy. And if you're offering psychotherapy, but you're calling it coaching, that's a really big problem. So, if you are going to provide a coaching service, I strongly recommend that you be really careful about setting out like a plan in writing of how you're going to distinguish that from psychotherapy, and making sure that you get consultation on that plan, so that you really and document that consultation, so you really are able to certify that whatever it is that you're offering is not psychotherapy, but just under a different name. Also, you want to be careful about selling your services or your products to people that you have undue influence over. If you are a university professor and you write a book of tips on studying, and you decide, oh, I want to sell this to my students, then that's sort of a problem, because maybe your student doesn't want to buy the book, but they feel like they have to, or else maybe you're not going to write them a letter of recommendation or something. So you want to be careful about those sorts of things. As a general rule, if your undue influence over another person would prevent you from dating them, then you also cannot have them as a customer. So, be careful around that. And then finally, be conservative with your credentials. And what I mean by that is that your psychology credentials qualify you to be an expert in certain areas, but not in other areas. And you don't want to use your psychology credentials to claim expertise in an area that doesn't actually have to do with psychology. So if I wanted to start a business offering fashion advice, I could do that. That would be totally fine. But if I said, oh, I'm Dr. Style, the fashion psychologist, and I'm going to use the neuroscience of fashion to help make sure that you're stylish, like, I really couldn't do that unless I somehow had done original research on the neuroscience of fashion or something. So, make sure that if you're starting a side business that isn't actually related to psychology, that you don't use your psychology credentials as a way of establishing credibility. So that is all of it. And I guess we will move ahead to the Q&A. But if you have other questions that we don't get to in the Q&A, feel free to reach out to me, danielwendler.com. We'll connect you with me, and the email, the contact form there goes straight to me. So yeah, hope to hear from you after the talk if I don't get to your question now.
Great, thank you, Dr. Wendler. Really interesting presentation. We got getting some feedback. People are really enjoying your strategy for a side venture. We had a lot of questions on time management. I feel a lot of people are kind of feeling it's a lot to juggle. Is it possible to generate extra income even if you're seeing 10 clients a day? How do you manage a side venture when you've got a family and a private practice, and what's your secret?
Yeah, so I guess every side venture that I've started has always been a side venture. Like, I've either been working full time or I've been in graduate school full time when I've been running my stuff on the side, and so it certainly is possible. But I think that number one, you have to realize that it is going to take sacrifice. Like, there have been nights when, I would have loved to go to bed on time, or I would have loved to watch the latest thing on Netflix, but instead I'm up, answering emails or doing work for my business. And so if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, probably, don't start this process. And then also, I think that it requires, like, being deliberate about scheduling out blocks of time. And if you can set aside specific time for the business and really try to get what you need to get done in that specific block of time, then that can be helpful. And what I would say is, it's okay to start with as little as 30 minutes here, an hour there. You don't have to say, all right, I need to have oceans of time. Even if you're like, I'm spending 1 hour twice a week writing content for my site to establish my credibility, give yourself a couple weeks or a couple months of doing that, and see what grows. And then from there, you can always decide to put more time into the business if it really feels like it has legs. But it's okay to start small with the time.
Okay, there was a question about the break the joker rule. When we break the joker rule, how can we limit that how can we limit that from creating an expectation that this will always be free? In other words, if I do workshops for free in the community to build credibility, will that set expectations that my workshops should always be free?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what I would recommend is that you sort of set boundaries around like what is included in the free stuff and what is not included in the free stuff. And so for instance, with my social skills site, I have what I feel like are more like fundamental topics. I provide for free, like conversation or body language, but then topics that are maybe more like deep dives or more advanced, like how to have a group conversation or how to have how to date somebody, like that is always behind the paywall. So you can set whatever system you want, but if you sort of are like, this is the sort of stuff that is always free, this is the sort of stuff that is always paid, then you can kind of answer clearly. If somebody says, oh, can you come back and do a workshop on X, Y, and Z, you can either say that's the sort of thing that I do for free, or that's the sort of thing that I charge for.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about fees. Does it only make sense to do a side venture if I can make more doing that than my hourly rate for therapy?
So the short answer is no. And the reason for that is because, like, number one, a side venture can offer flexibility. And so, like with therapy, you've got to schedule the hours, but like with a side venture, maybe you decide I'm going to be a writer and that's a way that I'm going to earn income. And then, you can write whenever you want. You can squeeze in little amounts of time here and there. And so maybe the time is, like you're able to use time that is easier. Or the impact is greater in some way. It feels really meaningful. One final thing to consider is that there's the idea of not just a dollar per hour, but the dollar per stress hour. And so how stressful is the work that you're doing? And that influences how much it makes sense to be paid. And so if your side venture is fun, if it's not that stressful, then it's probably okay to do it, even if you're not earning quite as much as you would doing a more stressful work.
Okay. Another question is about uh, how to reconcile the pressures of capitalism with the ethical goal of providing services to underprivileged communities.
So that's a great question because it's a big one. I think the answer that I would offer is that one of the benefits of doing a side venture as opposed to like doing gig work or taking on a second job or something is that ultimately you're in control and you're able to set your pricing however you want. And so one of the things that I've done since the beginning with my social skills site is that I have a pay it forward system. And so if you want access to a paid content that's on my site, but you can't afford it, then you can just send me an email and say, number one, I can't afford it. And then number two, here's a good deed that I'm going to do for somebody else as a way of saying thank you for you giving it to me for free. And then I give them the access for free. And I mean, I'm sure that there's some people that could have afforded that maybe are taking advantage of me, but I think there's a lot of other people that are maybe underprivileged that now can access it for free and have been sort of activated to go and do a good deed in their community. And I'm able to do it that way because I'm the boss. There's nobody else I have to answer to. So I think if you set up your own business, then you can find ways to both make money off of it in certain circumstances, but create impact with it and serve underprivileged people in other circumstances.
Okay. Uh, this one, we've got a lot of questions on this one as well. What are some good side venture opportunities for grad students, people with MAs in psychology, those that aren't licensed yet? What would
Mhm.
you recommend?
Yeah. So I think I'd say a couple things. I think the first one is that the first place that I would look is going to be in your grad program and your university. So not just other grad students, but potentially, undergrads or things of that nature, because, you have access to that audience you sort of have an in with that audience already. And so it's going to be maybe a faster way of finding customers. So I would think about, is there a problem you can solve for students, faculty, undergrads, et cetera. I think the other thing that I would say is, you know, I you know, think beyond your psychology training, both to like prevent ethical issues of, doing things that you're not, able to do, but also because when you're early in your career, you can maybe think about yourself more flexibly. You're not quite as locked into this identity of yourself as a psychologist. And so think of other parts of your life where you have giftings and strengths and so on and so forth, and think, is there something that maybe doesn't have to do at all with psychology that I could still do and do really well?
Okay, well, we're quickly running out of time, but I want to squeeze in one more. When do you shift from doing it all yourself to seeking outside professional management support and help with your
Yeah.
side venture?
I mean, I think that this is going to depend to a degree on like what else is going on in your life. Like if you have, if you're in a more stable financial place, then it maybe makes sense to invest in outside help sooner. If you're still, really pinching pennies, then probably doing it yourself sooner makes sense. I would say like it makes a lot of sense to get outside help if either number one, you know, you are becoming really limited for time, and your quality of life would be improved significantly by paying somebody else to free up hours of time for yourself. So instead of you working on the business yourself, you pay somebody to do something for you, and it's just done. Another thing is once the business has really been like validated, once you're able to see like, like there is an opportunity here, I have a good odds that if I put money in, I'm going to get more money out. Then, anytime that you can spend $1 and make $2, then I think that it makes a lot of sense to hire professional help.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Wendler, and thank you to all of our listeners for your participation and all your great questions today. A recording of this presentation will be emailed to everyone in 2 weeks. As soon as the webinar has ended, a short survey will appear on your screen. We hope you'll take just a few minutes to complete the survey and give us feedback on how we did and how we can continue to improve this series. Please be on the lookout for more Supercharge webinars. We're in the stages of planning those in 2021. We thank you for your attention, and we hope you have a great holiday season.